Live from downtown Vancouver at the Vancouver Film School campus, it's time for EP Live. Hey, welcome to EPN. My name is Victor Lucas. This is my good buddy Behr Safi. And we bring you the latest in everything cool. And as you can tell, people are here to celebrate. We've got a pre-Halloween special today. I think this gives it away a bit, doesn't it?
There's a lot of horror games we're going to be talking about. I'm glad I'm on the show because I love horror games, but I'm so terrified to play them at the same time.
Yeah.
It's a genre that I totally appreciate, but I'm just totally afraid to touch and get near.
Yeah, and some of them are just merciless, and especially if you go into the VR world and you get, like, we're going to talk about some of those a little bit, but I always say it's unfair when you're playing a horror game in VR.
I think so.
Because the developers, you can feel, are just laughing at you. When but that's later. We've got more fun stuff to do before we get to that, and you know what it starts with. It starts with our rundown, and today it's dedicated to a person named Mango Sentinel.
That's a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 reference, by the way, Mango Sentinel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. We got the esports guy.
That's the lore. That's the lore. A lot of people don't know that.
Mango, of course, right? A mango-colored sentinel.
Yeah,
nice.
That's exactly what it is.
All right. He says, I stumbled upon your channel through Happy Console Gamers. Yay! And what a consummate pro you. Okay, I'm not going to. He's just really nice. He says, so many rotten bozos on this platform, and your channel is a breath of fresh air. Well, I'm not going to. Okay, I'll take it. Right. I love it. No, it's very nice, Mango Sentinel. This rundown is all yours. You may have heard that there's been another great disturbance. Oh, what's up? Okay. We're going to try that again from the graphic. Start talking. You may have heard that there's... Oh, my goodness. Right there? Okay,
Blake's
ready?
a perfectionist, ladies and gentlemen. He wants the best possible quality. Let's give him a round of applause for Blake. Let's go.
Is it good now? Are we live? Are we rolling? Is this thing on? Hello. Hey, we're good? Okay, we ready? Okay, start reading, puppet. Okay, ready? You may have heard that there's been another great disturbance in the force. Earlier this week, news broke that Disney and Lucasfilm have parted ways with Game of Thrones producers David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, who had been developing a new Star Wars trilogy. The pair had stated publicly that they just don't have enough time to focus on Star Wars and all their other projects. But behind the scenes, there are rumors that the pair had creative differences with Lucasfilm and the studio's president, Kathleen Kennedy. This is the latest high-profile departure of filmmakers from the Star Wars franchise, following others like Jurassic World director Colin Trevorrow and original Solo directors Phil Lord and Chris Miller. The Benioff and Weiss movies were the only Star Wars films that Disney had on their schedule after this year's Episode 9, so it's unclear what new movies might be up next. What do you think about all this?
You got to imagine the amount of stress there is on any producer or director taking on a Star Wars IP. And I think especially after The Last Jedi, especially what Rian Johnson did with the franchise, which was a very mixed kind of opinion there. Alongside, all the pressure from Game of Thrones that they had, and now dealing with Kathleen Kennedy and all of this Disney buzz, it's difficult.
What they're saying publicly is Netflix gave them a ton of money, and they have a lot of responsibility. They got like a $300 million deal from Netflix. But here's what I think is likely going on a little bit behind the scenes right now. Kevin Feige is coming in after doing 22 Marvel movies. Like them or hate them or whatever, they've all succeeded, and they've made Disney a ton of money. And more people are happy about that than I think the Star Wars world and kind of the recent couple of pictures. And I think, and Feige has expressed that he wants to work on a film. And one of his compatriots, actually the person that helped to kind of launch the whole MCU, Jon Favreau, is a big part of The Mandalorian, which has incredible buzz. Taika Waititi is in there. And when I started to kind of put this picture together, I realized that J.J. Abrams has never been asked to do anything in the MCU, but he's a big part of the kind of ingredients of what's in Star Wars. I feel like it's not a coup or some big dramatic thing, but I think Disney is starting to kind of pivot over towards Kevin Feige and his band of creatives and the director pool that he's got access to and the writer pool. And I think that's going to be that's what's we're kind of slowly shifting towards.
Honestly, Vic, I think Disney, I think, is going to stop giving as much creative freedom. I think they gave Rian Johnson way too much creative freedom with The Last Jedi. And I think that they're going to try and plan things out more. And I think that
They
need to plan a trilogy out from the beginning instead of writing them as individual movies.
Yeah, I mean, you could say what you want about George Lucas, but Lucas had a vision and a plan and, the money to kind of make the movies that he wanted to make.
Yeah.
And I think that the Star Wars deal was so big and so many cooks in the kitchen and
the biggest
so many,
franchise ever.
But no one leader, and J.J. Abrams did not step up to say I'm going to do it, and I think Kathleen Kennedy has been trying to do that, but I feel like Kevin Feige might be saying, look, I want to kind of move into that direction and let some of the people that he's been grooming at Marvel take over a little bit more of the responsibility at Marvel. I would not be surprised about that. Kennedy retires, Feige steps in. There are people that move up the ranks at Marvel, and we get a different kind of Star Wars film.
That'd be interesting. I would like to see that. But I think just for any sole person, I think the Star Wars franchise is far too much to put on someone's shoulders.
Well, I feel like the Marvel stuff was too much, too. But Feige and the group that he shepherded prove themselves.
I think he had some terrific writers, too, that we don't give enough credit for, right? They were taking pages straight out of comic books and turning them into screenplays.
Yeah, incredible work.
So,
yeah, and I feel like Star Wars needs that figurehead, needs that person to kind of say, nope, this is the way that we're doing it. Honestly,
I agree.
Dave Filoni is the person to do that. The guy that's been doing all the animated work, and he's a part of The Mandalorian as well. Filoni's amazing. All right, let's move on. Benioff and D.B. Weiss aren't on Game of Thrones anymore, but things are shaking up over in the Seven Kingdoms as well. HBO has canceled one of Game of Thrones spin-off series, but is moving forward with another. First up, they've canned the planned prequel series starring Naomi Watts, which had completed a pilot episode, but the network just wasn't satisfied, so they're not moving forward. However, they have given a straight-to-series order for a different prequel titled House of Dragons. It's based on the Game of Thrones companion book, Fire and Blood, and will explore the story of House Targaryen 300 years before the existing show. It's not coming to regular HBO, though. It will instead be available on their new streaming platform, HBO Max, which launches next year. Lots of HBO Max that we're going to get into, lots of news in that world. It's a bit difficult to kind of comment on why they canceled something, but it's such a high-profile thing. You got your big star with Naomi Watts in there, and
you got to just imagine with all the producers there and the reception, that they got for the finale of Game of Thrones.
Yes. Did you see it?
I did see it. I loved it.
So did I.
I mean, I love the series.
Yes.
I do think they could have taken their time with the last. It was totally rushed.
Yes.
It was so clear. You don't have to be a film critic to know that. And you just got to imagine they're panicking a little bit because anything that comes out that has the Game of Thrones title now, people are going to be extra critical with it, right? They're going to be like, you guys are putting money on this when you guys could have been taking more time.
It's not stopping The Walking Dead, man. Like it's a license to print money, and people will give these things a shot.
Don't get me wrong, Walking Dead is doing fantastic, but you got to imagine, you got to admit that the buzz has really died down for The Walking Dead, I would say. It's not nowhere near it was 5 years ago.
They're launching a new show.
Yeah, so...
I mean, they're going to have 3... It's still, I think, the biggest show on cable.
Yeah.
And I think Game of Thrones is such a big juggernaut brand that, well, here's what I think. I think that if somebody says, look, we don't want your Naomi Watts series, cancel, there's got to be like 6 or 7 other streaming platforms. We'll take it. We'll do it, please.
There'll be a complete bidding war for that. Amazon will take it if anything.
But they can't because HBO has all the rights locked up, and they don't want anybody else going to any of that. It's amazing. I don't know, man. Like there was definitely some bad buzz around the finale and that final season, and then the D.B. Weiss and Benioff just had this big panel where they revealed that they didn't know what they were doing half the time.
I can talk for most fans and say I think majority of fans have just a little bit of a bad taste in their mouths after that. Like there was just such a build-up. There was 8 seasons over how many years.
Yes.
And it really, we were waiting for a lot of these characters to finally get to interact, for certain battles to finally happen.
It's
trying not to spoil anything.
It's so hard to end these things.
It is.
It's like everybody's disappointed with the ending. And people didn't like the Battlestar Galactica ending. They didn't like the Mass Effect ending. They didn't like Lost.
Okay, well, Mass Effect's a whole other thing, and Lost is a whole other thing, Vic. Let's not. I can argue with it. Those are just absolutely terrible.
I'm opening up some wounds
here.
This is sorry, Behr.
This is a lot of time wasted. Yeah,
it's hard, man. It's hard to end these things. What was the best ending, do you think, in a long-running series, whether it's a game or a?
I like Metal Gear Solid 4.
What's that?
Breaking
Bad was pretty epic. Yeah. Star Trek: The Next
Don't
Generation.
Don't get Blake started about Star Trek now. All right, let's cut this off. I don't want to hear any more of this.
He gets one Star Trek comment per show. That was it. That was it. He got the
cut
quota.
Him off, ladies.
It's like a tip jar. Okay, we got that in there. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Game of Thrones stuff. But you know, it's such an epic brand.
I'm excited.
And you know what? Those creators, those content people that were steering that ship, they helped to make it that epic brand that we all pay attention to.
Absolutely.
Without their involvement, it wouldn't happen. But here is the thing: like this Netflix deal that they've done. Now we see if they've got the chops. Now we see how creative they really are. We have no idea what they're working on, but whatever they said no to Star Wars on, and however much rubble they left behind them with Game of Thrones, if this next stuff that they work on is awesome, you know, we'll forgive and forget all that stuff.
Yeah, I seriously think there's creative differences. I think there's no producer or writer out there that probably does not want to put their fingerprint on Star Wars.
Yeah.
You know,
I think they don't want to do it.
No, I think they do want to.
Yes.
I think they would love to be a part of that enormous franchise because they all grew up with it.
Yeah.
So I think that there was something behind the scenes that we don't know.
I don't know,
about.
man. I think there's a lot of fans of Rian Johnson, and they just watch the hate and the heat that he went through in Hollywood and say, I don't know if that's for me, man. I don't know if I could deal with that, you know?
Deal with all the nerds.
You know who was an amazing professional with all of that was Ron Howard. Even as Solo was tanking, he was tweeting, well, I know it's not doing as well as everybody hoped, but this is the biggest opening I've ever had in my career. And, you know, I think he landed a movie that was sort of half done for him. It's not a great movie, but he did an okay job.
I feel like, you know, as time goes on, too, with Solo, people are not giving it as much hate as some other pieces of media that I've seen. I feel like it's aging a little bit better than some other things, but it wasn't terrific.
God, and once you open that Star Wars can of worms, it's you just want to talk. We could seriously do. It's Halloween, man. We got to get to Halloween.
Let's go.
Okay, all right, okay. We have a stop with Superhero Land here, and the HBO Max streaming platform is getting not one but two heroic new shows from the DC universe. Mega producer Greg Berlanti, who's overseen Arrow, The Flash, Supergirl, Legends of Tomorrow, Black Lightning, Titans, Doom Patrol, and Batwoman.
There's way too many of these shows, Vic.
Just to name a few. I mean, it's like a comic rack at this point, right? Is adding another two DC shows to the list. Variety reports that he's developing a new Green Lantern show along with an anthology series called Strange Adventures based on the DC sci-fi comics of the same name. Both of the new shows are being developed for HBO Max, which falls under the same corporate umbrella as DC and their existing streaming platform, DC Universe. And honestly, that's what he's doing. He's making comic books.
Yeah.
You know, he's making comic books in the binge watching kind of mentality that we have now. It's not like just network TV where you get that one shot to keep the ratings. People want these evergreen collections of these characters. And the other side of this, too, is the merchandising and the con visits and all that stuff. Yeah. He's got a formula, and it's working.
Yeah. No, it's clear with the amount of these shows, and a lot of them are shot here in Vancouver, that they have something going on that, you know, people are attracted to.
There's apparently a Superman Lois Lane show in the works for the CW as well. Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff. Close friends of mine are working on set right now on the big crossover they're doing. Yeah. And it's crazy that it's gotten to this point. It's been nearly, I think it's been 10 years now since Arrow first aired, right?
Yeah, and it's winding down, and Batwoman just got picked up for the full 22-episode season, and hopefully that starts to improve. It's a very controversial show.
Who's your pick for a Green Lantern? Who do you want to see play that role?
I want, who's the John Diggle actor? What's his name? David Ramsey. I love him.
Yeah.
You know, he's been constantly surprising in Arrow. You know, he's somebody that you watch and it's kind of a throwaway, like he is the bodyguard type guy, but he's got a lot of depth to the character. And that's the thing that surprised me about Arrow, because it was such a star vehicle for Stephen Amell, and he took on the mantle and did all the work, and he did the stunts, and he looked great, but it became that supporting cast on the show that I didn't know if I was going to like him as much as I did.
Yeah.
That helped to flesh it out and make it a more interesting show, and Ramsey's one of them, and I think that would be a great gift to him, because I don't think it's him that's saying I don't want to do the show anymore. I think Stephen Amell is the guy that's saying I don't want to do this anymore.
Because we all know Vic loved the 2011 Green Lantern movie. Was it 2011 that it came out?
You know what? I showed my daughter parts of that.
Why would you do that? Why would you?
It was on Netflix, and and we were scanning through all the icons, and she's like, "What's that one? What? I want to watch that." And so I only showed her the good parts in the movie.
There's no good parts in that movie,
well,
Vic.
when he's being taught on Oa and Sinestro,
unbelievable.
Mark Strong is great in that.
Poor Ruby's soul.
But now she wants to watch it again.
Oh my goodness.
She thought, let's watch Green Lantern again.
No.
It's because I skipped all the cloud BS and all the a lot of the love story BS, and Taika Waititi's in that movie.
He is in that movie.
And
That's right.
He plays like wasted in that movie. Not like stoned. He's they didn't use him properly. He could have been stoned. Yeah. No, there's a couple of cool shots, but it's directed by Martin Campbell, one of my favorite directors. He did Casino Royale. Like that's my favorite Bond movie.
Yeah, like Ryan
and GoldenEye.
Ryan Reynolds was in that film, and it's just crazy. What a time that was.
That's I know we're making a lot of people sad right now. Okay, after several years in retreat, it looks like the Call of Duty franchise is back in the fight. The latest game in the series, Modern Warfare, had the franchise's biggest launch in 6 years. Activision hasn't said specifically how many copies have been sold, but they claim that the game has sold more copies in its first 3 days than any other Call of Duty title this console generation, earning $600 million. They point out that that's more money than the opening weekends of big Hollywood movies, which might be why they're currently in the process of developing a big screen Call of Duty movie. They want to break some of those records too. As for Modern Warfare, expect the first DLC maps soon, and I just reviewed it. Have you played the game yet?
No, I have not. You told me about children dying and having a really dark
gas
intro
attacks.
And I don't know. I just feel like they were just trying to make headlines in my mind, and they succeeded.
What else do you do? You're on this rinse and repeat cycle as a developer. You go back into the fray, and you are dealing with ridiculous, crazy headlines. Yes, I know.
How many times could they go back? I seriously think that even the modern warfare kind of theme is going to start getting old because they're going to come back to it after 3 more games.
$600 million on the weekend. I think we're going on this for a little while longer.
It's gonna continue for sure. They're doing just fine, but I think it's because all the old Call of Duty fans who were playing Modern Warfare 1, Modern Warfare 2, even the original Black Ops, I think they were getting kind of dried out with the series.
Sure.
And I think this was their passage
It would be awesome for them to go biannually. But
it would be, but they won't do
that.
They
won't do it. I mean,
even Ubisoft's having a hard time doing that with Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
And obviously those games sell well, but nowhere near as well as Call of Duty does. Yeah. Right. So
I mean, a lot of people, they treat this as their sporting event, right?
Yeah,
Mr. Esports, right?
How did I become Mr. Esports on this show?
You love all the. You're more esports than I am.
Okay.
All right. So, but there's a lot of people like it's a season pass to a sporting event, and then it's a way that they sort of connect with their friends. Mm-hmm. And the multiplayer is as tight as it's ever been. So if that's what your jam is, you're going to have a good time with it. The gunfight mode is amazing in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a benefit to simplifying things too, right? I think before we were talking about how the game kind of just turned into Destiny, where people had abilities and people were ground pounding and doing these crazy, every class had a different insane ability. Right. It didn't even feel like a Earth shooter. It felt like we did go to space in one of the games, right? Future Warfare, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a benefit to just kind of simplifying it, bringing it back to why people first started to play these games. And growing upon that.
I agree, and I think that all of us that are there's probably a lot of us that are kind of skeptical about it because we are tuned into this world and we pay attention to the news in the video game space. And thank you for watching, by the way. But we kind of zone out on this because we hear it all the time. But there's a lot of busy people out there. Your regular day job is with busy people that probably buy 2 or 3 games a year, and I bet you've got a bunch of colleagues that Call of Duty is one of them.
That's true. Yeah, that's absolutely right.
And they know when they buy it, they get their money's worth because these things are not cheap, And Activision doesn't, cheap out on the development costs either,
Another thing that came to my mind too is I feel like the industry was kind of moving away, not fully moving away, but I felt like the amount of first-person shooter games that were coming out was starting to dwindle a little bit, or the ones that were coming out weren't as successful as they hoped. We thought that Destiny would have been a much bigger franchise at this point than it really is. And I know Borderlands done well, but there's been a lot of shooters that have come out that just did not really deliver.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of opened up this passageway for games like Call of Duty to come back, for even like Apex Legends to do as well as it is now.
Yeah.
So
there's a dependability, right? You know, the other thing, and Blake didn't put this in the news today, but the PlayStation 4 just crossed the 100 million
104
sales,
million,
threshold, and that is also an ingredient here, you know, because obviously PlayStation 4 gets some exclusive content with Call of Duty, and that sheer amount of machines out there with, you know, hungry gamers that want something that they're going to be able to play on it. Call of Duty fills that void as well. But the fact that PlayStation 4 has done that well in this generation, in the face of free games like Apex Legends and Fortnite and tons of them out there, and all the mobile stuff that's out there, is pretty remarkable. Pretty damn
100
good.
million. Quick question: do you still think PS5 is the last console?
I do.
For Sony.
I do.
Crazy, Vic.
I do because 100 million is a lot of people, but it's not what the industry deserves.
Okay.
You know, the industry deserves way more.
Let's make a deal right now,
Okay.
Vic. Dinner.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess we'll know in 7 years.
In 7 years, you'll be 24. I'll be 46.
I'll be 24.
Yeah.
But I think the way that we think of PlayStation as a conventional console, I think that's pretty much done. And streaming is going to be the big focus after this next generation.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll find out. But I think that the onslaught of competition for access is going to get enormous.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, if Apple said, you know, we really believe in Apple Arcade, we got enough, I don't know what the numbers are right now, but we got enough subscribers, and they already make so much money off of games, but they never quantify it. But if they start to see, look, we're investing in games and we're getting a major win back on this, if they gobbled up a bunch of developers that would make games at this scale, they would change the whole landscape of the video game industry like that. You know, would take a lot of work, development work. But
7-year bet, ladies and gentlemen.
7-year
we'll
bet,
come
yes,
back here.
please come back. It's like the 6-month bomb in Batman Dark Knight Rises. Remember? I'm going to set a bomb over here. It's going to go
God!
off
But
in
don't bring
6
Michael
months.
Caine out. Don't bring Michael Caine out.
That's my Bane.
I know that's your Bane, but eventually Michael Caine comes
Michael
after
Caine comes
Bane.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Would you like me to drive the Batmobile, Mr. Wayne? All right. Okay.
There it is.
All
There
right.
it is. Anyways.
Okay, that's enough of that. Let's take a look back at this day in everything cool. Welcome to This Day and Everything Cool for October 30th. On this day in 2007, one of the biggest action RPG franchises in the world was born. CD Projekt Red released the original Witcher game on the PC, thrusting players into the vast open world filled with magic and monsters. Based on the book series by Polish fantasy author Andrzej Sapkowski, The Witcher lets players take control of franchise hero Geralt of Rivia, a Witcher who uses superhuman abilities to fight even more powerful supernatural foes. CD Projekt Red was founded years earlier and had specialized in localizing big Western RPGs like Baldur's Gate, but with The Witcher, they wanted to create their own game franchise. Basing it on the books was a risky move because although they were popular in Eastern Europe, the stories weren't well known in the West, so the game had to win over players from scratch. The developers decided to put a strong emphasis on player choice. Every decision you make can have a lasting impact on the story, although some of the effects aren't apparent until much later in your journey. This worked well with the game's story. Like the books, the game has a complicated take on morality with often blurry lines between right and wrong, so it made sense to give players the ability to make their own decisions. The game was a smash hit with critics and PC gamers, but despite the success, The Witcher is the only game in the series to never be released on consoles. CD Projekt Red had been working on a PS3 and Xbox 360 version called The Witcher Rise of the White Wolf, but it was canceled and never officially released. That didn't stop them from making a sequel. The Witcher 2 followed in 2011, and this time it was released on consoles, landing on the Xbox 360 in 2012. We're back? All right, it is Halloween tomorrow. Surprise! Boo! If you didn't know that, and
I didn't wear my plaid today. I wanted to dress up as you, Vic, but
oh, you look. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, seriously?
I'm
You look
sorry.
great.
Thank you.
I would like to dress up like you. I need to get some
cardigans.
styles.
I'm trying to look older than I am.
I got to get some new clothes. Yeah, I guess
can't
you're
have-
the youngest person at the shop there, aren't you?
I think I am.
Yeah. That is awesome. What do you do now? Because there's a lot of people that know you from YouTube and from
I am a video editor. Esportes. I'm like Mr. Esports here on the show. I am a video editor here for beautiful British Columbia. So I like all the television ads and everything that you see all across about BC.
Isn't
I'm
that
the
cool?
one. I'm the man behind it and
Isn't
working
that
on
rad?
it. Oh, thank you.
Isn't that awesome? you know what was weird is the person that hired Behr had wanted to work with us way back in the day, and so we didn't end up working together.
Everyone wants to work with you,
but
Rick.
it's a very small world, you know,
Yeah,
which is really cool. But it speaks to the talent of this man. He's not just a handsome dude that knows his stuff and always comes prepared with notes, but he knows how to do a little bit of everything, you know, some editing, and some graphics work. And it's wonderful. Very proud of you. All right, let us get into our Halloween discussion right now. And I already did a segment called The First Five, where I looked at my first 5 creepy games as a suggestion for people out there. But this is a big topic. Horror games are a huge, huge part of the games industry. And you've already admitted that you're too much of a weenie and you get too scared
Thank
about
you, Vic.
video
Yeah,
games.
thanks for letting everyone know.
So am I.
Yeah. Yeah, I just feel like, you know, especially with the VR space and how good, you know, directors and game producers have gotten.
Yeah.
You know, one title that, you know, I always call it the best game never made was PT.
Right.
And I remember the first time I ever played PT.
Do you still have that on a PlayStation?
I still have that on my
Yeah.
PlayStation. There's actually a way, if you had it in your library,
Yeah.
you can use you can change your DNS settings and go to a private server and download it. Like,
Right.
It's a guide's out there for anyone who wants to play it.
That's great. You just know there's going to be a PT something in Death Stranding. They're going to acknowledge.
so.
I mean, Guillermo
Yeah.
del Toro and
Probably.
and Norman Reedus and Kojima all together again.
Yeah.
Of course, they're going to have something.
They'll probably be. I mean, they have Jeff Keighley in that damn game. They'll have everyone. Conan O'Brien's on there. But PT was one of those experiences that I remember that just, you know, using your microphone and, you know, looping around the same little labyrinth of a room. That was one of the most frightening experiences, and it was only like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I've ever had.
Yeah, that was terrifying.
And
that was not VR, but it was still.
It was
free.
not VR.
Yeah.
Yes, I can't even imagine a title like PT in VR with this long, tall lady who's floating behind you the entire time. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think they just broke the source code for that game. And they realized that after you pick up a certain item, the lady's actually floating behind you the entire time.
Oh wow.
So and you're moving the camera, and she's actually behind you.
Are you spoiling something?
I'm not spoiling.
Okay,
anything.
all right.
It's a 10-minute demo.
People should find a way to play that game. I agree with you. It is terrifying. I played it until I went, okay, that's enough, and I put it away. And I want to throw back to Eternal Darkness, though. You remember that one for the GameCube? You were about 4 years old when that came out on the GameCube.
Yeah. And you were about 12.
I was about 12, yeah. No, I remember that was after, I think, Silicon Knights had worked with Kojima on the Metal Gear Solid version that they did, the Metal Gear Solid port that they did for the Cube. And I think that they, you know, Silicon Knights has always been a narrative-driven studio. Rest in peace, Silicon Knights, by the way.
Yeah.
They had some missteps, but they were working on some pretty impressive software back then. Blood Omen Legacy of Kain, I think, was their first one. That was an incredible game. But Eternal Darkness, I think, learned a lot from the idea, like Psycho Mantis specifically.
That was Psycho Mantis the game.
Yeah,
that's what I
right?
considered Eternal Dark. It was breaking with your inputs. It would mess with your save data. Like just wonky stuff would happen.
Yes.
That would, you know, at
totally
that time,
breaking the third wall, right?
The third wall,
or
exactly.
Fourth wall.
I think
fourth wall?
Fourth.
Breaking
Thank
the
you.
fourth wall. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
But it was totally such a new and cool experience at the time. Like, do you even remember changing your controller port? Sorry, spoilers for anyone who's never played Metal Gear Solid 1. Like, that was so crazy.
Yes.
You know, and I feel like Eternal Darkness totally played up on that.
It made you question your sanity as you were playing the game.
Yeah, and that game has never had a re-release, I think, since then.
Nintendo published it. And
crazy.
They should bring it back. I mean, we were talking about that because I actually brought a GameCube in. We're going to be plugging in the GameCube if we have time and play Nightmare Before Christmas. But
hyping me up for that. Okay, like, let's go.
But there's that incredible library of all these different titles on the Cube, and it's just not easy to play that stuff until we get some kind of eShop or something. Hint, Nintendo. Well, I just wish they would do something where they would let they would do like a retro console rather than let other people like Analog or something come out there with an HDMI retro machine. I wish companies like Nintendo would just say, no, people have libraries. Let's go back into those libraries.
But speaking about a game that messes with game files and saves and kind of tries to break that fourth wall, right?
Yeah.
Is a free game actually you can get on Steam called Doki Doki Literature Club, which I'm sure you've heard of before. I don't know if you have. It's really dark.
It's tied to another game, right? Like
I think so, but it's kind of like a visual novel sort of experience, and it'll mess with text files. It's one of those games that I dabbled in with a friend, and I was like, I cannot do this anymore. Like it promotes itself as kind of this cute anime sort of game, and it gets super dark quickly. So if you really want to go down the dark path this Halloween, it's a free title. Just don't play it alone. I would say, at least I can't play it alone. It's too much for me.
I've got one called Amnesia.
Oh yeah.
And there's a whole series of Amnesia games.
A ton of them.
And this wasn't really a combat-centric game, but it really was a series that plays with psychological terror. You'll see furniture moving all around you. It plays with light and dark and different types of ghouls and creatures and stuff that pop up, and the sound is amazing. And it's available on everything. I think they did collections of this. I think you could even play it on the Mac. It's everywhere.
I want to give a shout out to now a VR game, which is a bit of a hidden gem.
Yep.
And this was Elijah Wood's studio, Spectre Vision.
Oh, you like this one?
I actually.
Transference?
I liked the creepiness. It was a thriller.
Yeah.
I feel like they were trying to do something cool with it. And I actually enjoyed my experience with it. Yep. I didn't go through the entire title, but I thought that's kind of where the future...
Made me a little barfy.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's what Elijah Wood wanted you to,
I guess,
to go
right?
through, right?
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'm going to bed and I feel sick. This is not...
But it was playing with, kind of, looking down a hallway and seeing a dark silhouette and just kind of looking through. It was totally kind of the things that we all find creepy growing up.
Like hallways that are there, and then you turn back and they're not there.
Not there.
And doors that,
there are silhouettes and shadows. It was just, I think that's, obviously, we're still in such an early stage of VR, but I think that game kind of was a hint of the future of once VR grows, and if VR grows, if we continue supporting it, of what kind of VR experiences we can have.
I feel like VR is going to have like a massive collection of horror games.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be like
Resident Evil 7 is one of the best ones.
Yeah.
I think it's like hands down one of the best VR games ever.
I streamed that when I played it for the first time.
You're insane.
I was just weeping.
Yeah.
I was completely freaking terrified and swearing my mouth off I was there's an element, this from streaming, where you're trying to engage the audience and you're trying to keep up with the conversation. I didn't have like the comments or anything like that floating in my head. That's so weird in VR.
Yeah. I've never seen that, actually.
Well, it just breaks everything if you've got like, hey, how you doing today, Vic? Floating around there.
And someone's trying to kill you with a chainsaw.
It just breaks the whole thing. So I didn't have that, but I was aware that people were watching the stream, and I was like, I was trying to hold it together, and then I was like, oh my God, holy shit, I'm running away from the crazy lady that opened the door.
What a genre! Like it's an amazing genre that I think doesn't get enough love sometimes.
Yep.
And you mentioned Dead Space, I believe, earlier. And think about Dead Space has not had a re-release or a remaster of any kind.
Unbelievable.
Which is just insane. And their 10-year anniversary went by last year. I think it was last November.
Right.
And
not a peep.
Yeah, not even like a little mention or just kind of a thank you or anything. There's a lot of kind of hidden gems, I feel like, in this space.
The Dante's Inferno game, which was made by the same group of folks that worked on Dead Space, I just heard that they're turning that into a show. It's just been optioned for something, which is crazy. Yeah. But EA is sitting on these properties and not doing anything with them. Re-release even for this generation would make so much sense.
Exactly.
But they don't do the single-player game that much. That's why Jedi Fallen Order, our hopes are strong for that one.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's a great game, but hopefully it sells a lot, and then they'll say, okay, I guess we can do more of these single-player type of experiences.
That's what we got to support. We got to let people know what we want and put our wallet where,
100%. A classic horror, I guess, franchise, because they've made more than one, and it's sort of, but it's been absent for a while. Left 4 Dead, just a super fun zombie killer. I guess we've had so many zombie games that they got a little.
And they've tried to bring back that formula in the team that had evolved. Yeah. And I think there's a new one coming out. I forget the name.
There is. Yeah.
There's a new one coming with the same Left 4 Dead team.
Yeah.
And it's bizarre to me that Left 4 Dead. It's kind of like the old saying, Valve can't count to 3.
Yeah.
Right? They cannot release a third game for the life of them, right? Like, so it's incredible to me that Left 4 Dead has not seen a sequel.
And you know, honestly, that's a franchise where it's so much about replaying and seeing how far you can go and just getting together with buds and taking out all the zombies. Of course, the Call of Duty Zombies modes as well, I think, fill that void quite a bit, in addition to Left 4 Dead. And then there's other games out there like Dying Light, which I talked about. I love that game. I still love that game. But how about Outlast? Did you ever check out Outlast?
I did play Outlast. Is some dark stuff. That's what was that movie? Was it the Hostel? Do you remember Hostel, the movie?
Yes,
really dark. I felt like Outlast was like Hostel, the video game for me. But
you're totally under equipped to deal with the carnage, which makes it that
hiding under beds. You're hiding under
you have a flashlight, basically. Good luck. You know, and it's a lot like Alien Isolation, right? Like it's just like, how do I stay alive? Run the hell away. Yeah, it's very good though. It's very, very well made.
You know, another game might not be scary, but I feel like because it's kind of has the Halloween feel, I want to give Bloodborne a little bit of a shout out.
Okay,
here.
yeah.
I feel like, you know, if you want to just get into something that kind of gives you a bit of a dark, you know, creature kind of aspect.
It turns you into a monster. It's
I
so
think after all the
frustrating.
deaths, okay, Vic, I see what you're doing there.
You become a violent, vicious asshole that no one wants to be around. That's the secret sauce in Bloodborne.
Yeah,
right?
but you do that enough to the point where you actually start loving the game. I feel like.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of people who've gone through that phase. I think Scott Jones was one of them, right?
He was
one of those people who reviewed the game. I think he gave the game like a 2 out of 10.
No.
And then,
we appreciated it.
And then like
He
2 or
stuck with
3
it.
weeks later, he was like, this is one of the greatest games I've ever played.
Yes.
And it goes to show how some of these titles really kind of impact you over time.
Definitely, we're looking at a Bloodborne 2 for PlayStation 5.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I think so.
Want to bet?
No, I'm not going to bet on that one. I'm going to stick to my PlayStation 6 bet. That sounds like a free meal.
Okay. Have you? I've got Fear on my list. F.E.A.R.
That's a franchise that also was great when it released.
Yes.
Really kind of fell.
Yeah,
down.
It's like they try to turn them into like action things. Same thing with Dead Space,
That's
right?
Exactly. I think that went through the same kind of procedure that Dead Space went through.
You don't want to make the same game over and over again, but everybody's kind of lining up to have that experience again, and the jump scare kind of deal, and the idea of ripping people apart. And in the case of Fear, there were all of these cool supernatural powers and things like that.
Yeah.
Very, very evocative, though. It kind of had a similar kind of vibe as Condemned, which I talked about in my first 5, but that audio soundscape, and there was a lot of police procedural type stuff in the game, dealing with this unbelievable, unbearable threat.
Yeah.
Fear was cool.
So
and I
many
liked
great
Fear
stuff.
2, and then the rest we don't
3.
talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, I know you mentioned it, but we have to just let's give a round of applause for Resident Evil, guys.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Capcom has finally come back. You know, I was totally thinking that Capcom was going down the drain, that they were completely done.
Really?
Well, I mean, look at Resident Evil 6.
Yes.
You had Resident Evil Umbrella Corps. That all
Right.
these terrible spin-offs.
Right, yes.
I thought the franchise was done.
Right.
Resident Evil 7 came out, shocked us. Resident Evil 2 remake, incredible.
I had somebody on the channel actually comment about Resident Evil 4, and they said that game sucked. It wasn't even scary, and I'm like, I don't
know if that was even the point of Resident Evil 4, though. I think it was to really change Resident Evil 4. I think Resident Evil 4 is the reason why franchises like Gears of War exist, right? Because of that over-the-shoulder view, they were the first to really make that cool.
It was a revolutionary sort of change for the franchise, but it was also pulling what they had learned from the previous Resident Evils and turning it into a much more 3D thing, which I found terrifying, and it totally creeped me out.
Yeah.
Didn't creep you out?
Not 4.
No.
Not 5. 1, 2, and all the other ones probably will creep me out.
If 7 may be the most terrifying, though, in VR.
In VR, yeah. I would totally agree with you on that.
Yep.
I'm not getting anywhere near that.
Yeah. Okay, we've got more spooky stuff to talk about after this, but it's going to be a little bit more family friendly, and I bet you can guess a few of those titles. But right now, let's take a look at my review for MediEvil. I've got a perfect game for our Halloween-type vibe out there right now. This is MediEvil as reimagined by Other Ocean, and I just recently reviewed their Aladdin Lion King collection, so it's surreal that I'm talking about two Other Ocean games so close together like this, but Other Ocean took a look at the old classic MediEvil title that came out for the original PlayStation 1, which I remember thinking aesthetically was quite pleasing, and it looked cool, and I like this skeleton knight named Daniel Fortescue trying to defeat this evil creature named Zarok and all of his minions, and I like the fantasy kind of sprinklings all throughout the game, but I also remember feeling like the camera and the controls let me down, and I didn't love the game. I had definite problems with the original MediEvil, so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to look forward to what Other Ocean is going to do with the visuals here, but I had my doubts about whether I was going to enjoy the second-to-second play of the game, but I'm happy to report that sometimes these remasters can really surprise you in some very pleasant ways. What you're doing is you're hacking and slashing all kinds of these fantasy-infused baddies, whether they're zombies that erupt out of the ground, or bushes that are shaped like dragons that spring to life, or trees that will take a swipe at you. One of my favorite levels was the Pumpkin Gorge, where you had all of these jack-o'-lanterns and pumpkins creatures chasing after you, and the boss was a giant pumpkin that you had to defeat. I thought that was fantastic. There's a tremendous amount of old-school type challenge in this game as well, where if you don't complete a level and basically get to the end of the level as your checkpoint, you're going to have to replay the entirety of that level. And that means you've got to go and collect a lot of things, like in this town that took me a few times to do it. I had to create a holy crucifix inside of a church, and I had to find the ingredients in order to be able to do that. And I would get all the way to creating the crucifix, and then some creature would come out of the ground, some ghostly creature would come out of the ground or from around the corner and get me. And I'd have to do the whole thing, and so you'd have to go to step one and take care of those things, move a box and push that over a lever and open a door and get that thing and go there and melt that over there. It got a little frustrating, but you know what? That's par for the course with a lot of these old school games. I can't say that playing the Crash games and the Spyro games again don't have moments of frustration as well, because those certainly do. That's part of it, man. That's part of jumping back into this retro renaissance that we're in. It's not going to blow you away with its originality, partially because it's based on early 3D video game design. So back then, developers weren't too out of control ambitious with the types of things that you're going to do. Basically, you're going from level to level, and this is very much complete a level, load up a new level, defeat the challenges, load up the next level, unlock some new weapons, load up the next level. So it's very sort of cut up like that. It's not like one of these organic, you're not going to mistake this for The Last of Us, is what I'm telling you, or Spider-Man or something like that. But there's not a problem with that. Sometimes that kind of a game is a nice respite from the deluge of all of these AAA titles and all of these big budget games. And frankly, this is a game that comes out at a lower price. And for fans of the original MediEvil, this is a great, attractive offering because of all of the work that has gone into this, with the visuals, with the camera controls, with the controls in general. And even though the camera has been fixed for sure, and you do have some rotational control of the camera, there are parts of the environment where the camera is locked and you'll get the little icon that you can't move the camera. And I did also have some frustrations, not only in addition to the difficulty spikes and the replays of levels, but also sometimes where it's like, I didn't see that guy. I couldn't move the camera. That's not fair. That's a cheap kill. Let's do it again. There were many moments like that, but that's okay. I forgive it. One of the standout features of this title is the beautiful music that is permeating through the adventure, which I really appreciated. I think even people that missed the original MediEvil will find a lot to enjoy in this title. Other Ocean did a terrific job, and they made the game incredibly accessible. And I think MediEvil was a worthy game to do this with, mostly because the game promised something cooler, or the original game promised something cooler than what was delivered. I always thought, with fondness, MediEvil was just, it missed its mark. It was a cool concept, and with a little more finesse or a little more style, it'd be really sweet. So I applaud the fact that Sony worked with Other Ocean to get this done. I certainly feel like it's a worthy addition to a library if you're a fan of third-person action-adventure platformers, which happen to be my favorite genre, so I'm partial to that. And it's comfort food. It's really fun, it's very easy to play, but, be prepared to be doing these levels over and over again. MediEvil for the PlayStation 4 is a pretty cool game. I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. Yeah, so we could probably throw MediEvil into a family-friendly Halloween game, especially when you're blasting at characters like this in the middle of the game.
Listen, Vic, this list better be good. You introduced your daughter to Green Lantern from 2011.
All
right, so we got to make this list good for Ruby's sake right now.
I'm playing a game right now, and it's the next game that I'm going to move on to. And I guess you could kind of put it into Halloween, although not really. It's Concrete Genie, and it's a game where you paint all kinds of things on walls, and they come to life and everything. And I started to play. It's really beautiful, and I haven't really done this that often, but it was like, nope, I'm not playing this right now. I'm stopping right now. I have to play this with my kid.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it was pretty cool. So I'll have a review of that with Ruby, I think, if she likes it. But we'll probably talk about that. But right now, we talked about some of the horror stuff. I did the first 5 kind of spooky stuff that's sort of more gamer-centric. We just talked about a bunch more ideas. I mean, the list is endless, and I'm sure we just kind of like scratched the surface. But there are family-friendly games that you may want to get in the Halloween spirit with maybe tonight with your kid, although some of you are on the East Coast, so it's probably getting pretty late. But maybe tomorrow before you go out trick-or-treating, or get them all on a sugar high and then sit down in front of the TV and play a bunch of these games. I would say that tomorrow night is a weird night, as Johnny Millennium and I kind of talked about with Luigi's Mansion 3. Yeah. Why did Nintendo not release it
before?
On the Friday, this last Friday, so people would have had the weekend to get in the Halloween spirit. It's a perfect game to get in the Halloween
So they're
spirit.
releasing it tomorrow right on Halloween. Is that correct?
Tomorrow, yes.
Well,
I guess at 9 o'clock tonight. Well, because of East Coast time. Yeah, right? So people will – and our review is up. Johnny and I freaking love this game.
Yeah, because you got to imagine kids are going trick-or-treating, right, during their evenings after school.
Yes.
So they're not really concerned about going to the game store.
Yeah, and all day at school. Like my kid is in her costume tomorrow, and they're celebrating it all day.
Yeah,
which is great. When
That's
you're
absolutely
a kid.
right.
Yeah. So there's not going to be too many people rushing home to play this on their Switch, and it's too bad because it's a great game to get you into that spirit. But you could say that about all of the Luigi's Mansion games.
Maybe Nintendo's smart. Maybe Nintendo's realized that most of their target audience is now in their 20s and 30s, who have nothing to do on Halloween.
Their 20s and 30s.
Yes.
I love
20s, 30s.
Oh, you're making yourself older than me. That's amazing. 20s and 30s.
A game I want to give a shout out to, though, 2003, because I think as far as kid-friendly games, there's a lot of classic stuff on the list here. I want to give a shout out to Grabbed by the Ghoulies.
Oh, my God.
2003, Rare, when they were first acquired by Microsoft, I believe. That was one of their first titles that they released.
Yes.
And it was, it was one of those games that came out.
I want to play the Price is Right music. Ba-dum, you know what I'm saying? Because I was there reviewing that game on the Xbox when it came out, and Rare was like one of my favorite if not my favorite game company on earth with all the N64 stuff that they did. And then Grabbed by the Ghoulies comes out. It's like, I don't know, guys. I mean, it was kind of cute.
I think it was a cute game to go back and play with kids. The problem was, I feel like the people who loved Rare games, they were used to the Perfect Darks. They were used to, obviously, we had a Perfect Dark Zero eventually come out. But they were used to like the Banjos and the Donkey Kong. So obviously at the time,
original Xbox.
This was original Xbox, which I think at the time was not a right call. But I think as a lot of a lot of these people who bought these games became parents. I think it's a fun game to play with your kids.
I mean, it
it's
still
so
has
simple.
The Rare charm and stuff in there, but it doesn't have the Jet Force Gemini or the Diddy Kong Racing or the Conker's Bad Fur Day. It doesn't
play that with your kid, Nick.
That's a great kid-friendly game. Okay, I'm glad that you put that in there. I'm going to throw down Plants vs. Zombies, and you could sort of go any one of them. All like the mobile game is fun. and anybody can play that game.
Yeah.
And it, the mobile game came from the PC original, that sort of tower defense thing.
Yeah.
The shooters have been fun. The modern, what is it?
Modern Garden Warfare.
Garden Warfare.
Yeah,
I always get that confused. and the new one I just reviewed too, the Battle for Neighborville, was really fun. There's actually lots and lots of
those games sell well. There's a reason why they keep coming out.
It's really fun, and I played it with my nephew and my daughter, and they both were like, "Wow, look at all the it's really flashy. It's got the Frostbite engine, and there's all kinds of stuff flying everywhere, and the zombies are super cool and distinct, and the plants are it's crazy, enjoyable.
Vic's plant reviews, I like it.
Yeah, no, it's really it's a solid franchise.
I'm gonna take us back.
Okay.
I want to give a shout out to a game that I till this day regret trading in.
Okay.
I never trade in games, and this was the only game I traded in. I still can't sleep at night.
Oh, really?
Thinking about trading it in, because I traded it in for Mortal Kombat, the animated TV show, which was terrible. It was like this VHS.
You traded a game for a show?
For a show. Listen, Vic.
Wow. Okay.
These were dark times in my life that we won't get to.
All right.
This is Zombies Ate My Neighbors, which was on the Super Nintendo, which was a terrific game.
Classic game. Round of applause for Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
Zombies Ate My Neighbors was
so inventive.
So good.
Yes.
And it was one of those games that I felt like I appreciated more the older I got.
Yep.
I don't know how well it did when it first came out,
yes.
but it was a terrific game, really difficult, so it might be hard to play with a kid without them throwing the controller at you. I don't know if Ruby does that to you, but I doubt it. But
No. She's the luckiest kid in the world if she wants to get into video games. She was actually saying that she wants her own Switch account so she can buy games, and I said, Ruby,
so she can watch
we don't
Green
need
Lantern.
to buy any more games. We have a lot of games. We're not buying more games. Don't worry about that.
She just wants to watch Green Lantern in privacy without any of your confirmation.
The Green Lantern game.
Oh, God.
Now
Vic.
I know what I'm going to put in front of her for Christmas.
No, Vic. Ruining her poor childhood.
That is a great suggestion. Zombies Ate My Neighbors. I love that. And I love when games are made so long ago in the 16-bit era, but they hold up, and some of the art also kind of holds up with 3D art.
I think 16-bit has aged wonderfully.
Yeah, absolutely it has. I'm going to say The Nightmare Before Christmas, the Oogie's Revenge, which was a PS2 and Xbox original game, GameCube game.
I've never played this game.
It's kind of like a very, very light Devil May Cry action-adventure platformer thing with Jack Skellington. And I brought in the HD RGB HDMI connected GameCube.
Interesting.
And we were going to play the GBA version. It was going to be the first GBA game of Nightmare Before Christmas that we've ever streamed on EP Live, but we're running out of time, and Johnny and I have actually got to go and see Terminator after the show, so I don't think we're going to have time to show it. But I'll keep the GameCube here, and we will stream the occasional Game Boy Advance and GameCube titles off of the machine. But yeah, Nightmare Before Christmas, they actually did a pretty solid job. I think everybody's a fan of Nightmare Before Christmas, yeah. But seriously, they need to look at that brand. I mean, it's been back in the Kingdom Hearts games.
It is, that's right, yeah.
Right? But there's a lot of different ways that we could get back into that Tim Burton
I think so, too.
universe,
yeah,
right?
And it's interesting, right now in my workplace, in the office, there's a lot of mothers, and they talk about how their kids actually really gravitate towards Nightmare Before Christmas. I think there's still something so special about that art style and, just that film. That still, can appeal to the new generation.
Yeah, so you need an older console to play that, but I think if you have the means,
this is why we need backwards compatibility, Vic.
Unbelievably so. Yeah, this year it has become more profound for me than ever before. With companies like Analog, with all of their announcements and their systems, I've been reviewing 16-bit Superhero. I've actually got one for you guys here, but it's time to have all of this stuff at our fingertips, and I honestly don't know how we do that unless we go into this console-less future. I think one of the holdups is all the hardware that people are going to need to create in order to access all of this stuff. And I'm telling you, if Google Stadia says we have this suite of every Konami game that they made for 8-bit and 16-bit as part of your monthly subscription, a lot of people are going to go for that.
I'm only going to be convinced once there's no lag, but that's a whole other conversation we can get to.
Esports, I know, I get it.
Gotta be esports. You gotta make sure you're frame perfect with every jump.
Yes.
And speaking of a game that has a lot of jumps, I want to give a shout out to Ghosts and Goblins.
Yeah.
Capcom game. This is not one that a lot of people think about when we think about Halloween.
It's not scary.
It's not scary.
It turns you into a monster.
It does
when you play it.
It looks like we're talking about a lot about those games.
Yeah.
But this game's also in the Nintendo Switch Online service now. They have the Super Nintendo lineup.
Yep.
And this is part of that library. I think it's an easy game to access.
Yep.
Easy game to play with a kid.
Easy game to be terrible at.
Yes, it's true. It is a little difficult, but that's why we can't play that on Google Stadia. You know how much lag that would add to each jump pick?
I know, I hear you.
Unbelievable.
You got to prove it, Google Stadia. You got to prove it. That is a great one. And Castlevania fits in there.
I think so.
Some of the games are family friendly. Some of them definitely not. And the show, definitely not. But it's super cool.
Yeah, the show's
Netflix,
really violent.
Anime, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So there you go. There's some suggestions. You can get into the Halloween spirit tonight and play some of these games with your family, or put on the VR headset and play some Resident Evil 7 and freak yourself the hell out.
Don't do
and
that.
You will have a good time.
Don't do that.
We do have a 16-bit superhero game, and it's a little bit creepy. Here's a look at Spawn. Oh, the swears, guys. Oh, the swears. Today's 16-bit superheroes game is Spawn, which came out in 1995 on the Super Nintendo. I think there was a Sega Genesis version of this cartridge as well. I played the Super Nintendo version, developed by Yuki Yotai, I think I'm saying that correctly. And it was published by Sony on Nintendo, which is kind of crazy. I love the look of this game. I have to get that out of the way. I think the visuals for Spawn are really terrific, especially because this was coming sort of late in the day for 16-bit side-scrolling titles, and the onslaught of the PlayStation and all kinds of other stuff was coming. So people were kind of at the top of their game, at least with the visuals and the animations. And there are some really, really cool character designs, some great enemies that you're going to fight in here. There's definitely repetition. This is another one of those incredibly challenging games based on mechanics. And one of the shocking things that I found with Spawn is that even though there's some special moves and some cool powers that you can pull off using combinations on the button and the controller, which are difficult to pull off, by the way. It's not like you can take them and keep dishing all that stuff out, and they also deplete your energy. But all of the core mechanics, the punching, the kicking, the jumping, the hovering, the floating from ledge to ledge, because even though this is mostly a beat 'em up where you're scrolling on sort of horizontal planes, there is also some verticality in the game, some platform jumping, but all of those core mechanics are really stunted, and so pixel precise that the frustration level is incredibly high. I kept getting cheap hit after cheap hit, or trying to bounce off of a wall and navigate my rather large sprite of Spawn, which is in the plus column, but I was trying to get my large Spawn character to land perfectly within these little ledges and stuff, and I kept doing it over and over and over. It was driving me insane, and I was like standing up and screaming at the TV, which brought me back to the day of 16-bit gaming, because there was a lot of that back then. I think over time the games industry started to say, well, let's maybe make this a little more inviting and a little bit easier, let more people into this thing so that they're not screaming at their televisions and ready to hurl their controllers out the window. I do appreciate all of the artistry that's in here. This is a rather dark tale for a 16-bit superhero game. It involves Spawn chasing after these 13 missing kids that have been scooped up, and they've been, trapped, and you've got these evil demonic forces and pretty cool creatures that you gotta beat up along the way. The cut sequences are all sort of comic book style and definitely in the flavor of the darker tone of the Spawn comics, although it doesn't get as dark as the Spawn books. It's still kind of cartoony. There's a lot to really appreciate with this game. I love the music as well. I thought it was really cool, and some of the background environmental stuff was pretty sweet. One level you're in Egypt, and one level you're in an old Gothic church, and then you're in the pits of hell, and you're battling demons. You're on top of New York buildings. So there's a lot to kind of hang your love for Spawn on in this title, for sure. I just wish that the mobility and the core sort of fundamental stuff, the punching and the kicking, just gave you a lot more freedom. I'll give you a perfect example. You have a chain attack that you don't have to use any of your sort of energy to use, but you have to press down, and then I think it's the Y button, and it's just sort of like from a crouched position, and it shoots up the little chain, and it's like, well, you got the chain. Why can't I stand up and, Ghost Rider style, just hack and slash with this chain and do some lethal carnage and damage? You can't really really do that. And the other thing, too, is that the ledge jumping, the platform hopping stuff that you have to do in this thing is just infiltrated with so many cheap projectile attacks. You'll be leaping for a ledge, and then out of nowhere, poof, a little fireball will knock you and turn you into the Human Torch for a second. Did you ever notice how many of the old beat-em-ups back in the day, when you got hit by any kind of fire thing, they all had the same animation? It's like they borrowed something from somebody, either Capcom or SNK, but everybody's on fire and falling. And that happens to Spawn a lot, and thusly I would stand up and yell at my TV. I'm doing all of these 16-bit superhero segments based on my appreciation for superhero games through the ages. Most recently, the Spider-Man game that came out for the PlayStation 4 in 2018. I freaking loved that, and I said, well, I'm going to start collecting all of these old cartridges, these old superhero cartridges that I never got to. And so I'm reviewing these games as if I'm playing them for the first time, and some of them I definitely am playing them for the first time, like this Spawn title. I never played it back in the day. Like I say, there's a lot to dig. There's a lot to have put a smile on your face with this game, but there is also a tremendous amount of frustration. So I'm going to give Spawn for the Super Nintendo a 6.5 out of 10. Yeah, too bad. Spawn was
6.5, Vic.
That's, I mean, for the...
Boo, give him a boo, guys.
Never been booed on the show before.
Good.
This is good.
Because Johnny John is in the audience here.
It's a beautiful game, but yeah, it's too bad. You know what? I'm becoming a discerning retro gamer now. I'm playing all of these things. Yeah.
You really are an old man, Vic.
Yeah,
I thought I'd never say that.
Oh, yeah.
Play Spawn in the Demon's Hand on Dreamcast. There's a game that also came out.
Okay. It
was made by Capcom. I love that game.
Todd McFarlane worked on that game, I think.
I think he did. Yeah. Not the one on PS2. Not Armageddon.
Oh yeah, that one sucked.
Yeah, Armageddon's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Play in the Demon's Hand.
Spawn and the Demon's Hand on the Dreamcast. Yeah. I wonder if I have that. I probably do. Behr, it is awesome to have you on the show. Isn't he great?
Oh, thank you.
He's a great co-host.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Yes. Love having you here.
Come back, talk about Green Lantern any day of the week.
We're going to have a Green Lantern movie special on Electric Playground very soon. We are back on Friday, and my guest will be Matt Levitan. He's going to be a guest host with me, and we're going to be talking about our history together, because he was one of the guys that helped to run PlayStation Canada for many years. But we are collaborating because he has a client named Extra Life, and we're doing a special EP live stream, which you are all welcome to on Saturday from noon till 2 o'clock, and it's all about generating some proceeds to go towards Extra Life and the BC Children's Hospital, and that's going to be here live at the Vancouver Film School Cafe, 390 West Hastings, and of course we'll be on the stream right there. I'll give you guys a little bit more information about everything on my social stuff, but we'll definitely dive deep into what we're planning to do on Saturday on Friday's show. So please come back for that. We have got more content coming up tomorrow, so please stay tuned to this channel. And thank you to all the new folks that are watching the streams and catching up on all of our reviews and stuff. It is a very busy time of year. Thanks for watching, everybody. We will see you on Friday. And until then, play forever.